With the prices we're dealing with these days, Milsurp collecting has become a very difficult hobby to take part in, but you never know what you're going to find at a gun show. Let's dive in. What's up guys, Readiness Reviews here with you again, and in this video we're talking about the military surplus firearms market. I literally just got back home from a gun show, and at today's show, of course, I came home with something, but we'll discuss this World War II beauty more in depth here in just a moment. At this point in time, nearly halfway through 2025, the firearms industry is booming. After the event with the beer flu, both firearm and ammunition prices completely skyrocketed, and a lot of that had to do with simple inflation of the US dollar. They literally doubled the amount of money in circulation, and of course that causes prices to go up. But when it comes to firearms specifically, we also had other factors to deal with, like supply chain issues, the war with Russia, which really disrupted the ammo market, and in general as a nation, we've really been dealing with uncertain times. And in uncertain times, people go to the safety of firearms. With what I've witnessed recently though, it seems like things may be finally easing up just a little bit. I'm always keeping an eye on the market, but I've been to 2 gun shows in 2 weeks, and in both instances I was very surprised at how busy they were and how much prices have come down on certain types of guns and ammo. Modern firearms specifically are in abundance on the market, and the prices have really started to come back down to something a little bit more normal. Whether it be bolt-action sporters, AR-15 platform firearms, shotguns, or the plethora of pistols out there, modern firearms are abundant and pretty cheap at this point. Unfortunately, however, I can't really say the same for Milsurp firearms. Military surplus firearms like this Dutch carbine are still fetching really high prices, and if anything, it might be getting worse. The average Lee Enfield pattern rifle is still about $6, about the same for Mosin Nagants. If we're moving into Mausers, especially German Mausers, of course, we're talking like $1,000 plus. And don't get me started with American firearms. They are all just ridiculously priced, and those prices seem to keep snowballing, getting bigger and bigger with every show I go to. It's crazy. I was very happy to see that ammo prices across the board have been coming down. Those issues we encountered with the lack of Russian imports seem to have been ironed out at this point, and we're seeing really good stock from manufacturers like PPU, Bannerman, and Norma. Now, I'm certainly not saying Milsurp rifle ammo is cheap, but at least it's available in far better numbers than what we were looking at even a year ago, and I truly hope that trend continues, because ammo prices is one of the major blocks from people getting into this hobby that we like so much. Today's show had no lack of military surplus firearms. There was a ton of stuff out there, but in most cases, those prices were pretty hard to justify, for me at least. This was actually one of the last guns I ran into at today's show, and I'm so glad I did, because I think I got a pretty decent deal, but I'll let you guys be the judge of that. This is a Dutch Mannlicher M95 Carbine, and my example here is the pattern that would have been used in the Second World War. Milsurp firearms from the Netherlands are overlooked a lot of the time, but this handsome little rifle and its $325 price tag immediately stood out to me. $325 is already not an unreasonable amount of money for one of these rifles, or really any Milsurp bolt action for that matter. You guys know I'm not content settling for sticker price though. I at least had to try for some kind of discount. I didn't want to come off insulting and be too overly aggressive, but I offered $300, and the gentleman happily accepted, and here I am with my $300 World War II carbine. Now I think it's about time we get a better look at this guy. It is still zip tied from the gun show, so we'll snip that off first. This is of course a Dutch Mannlicher 1895 carbine, and they are very small, lightweight, and handy little rifles. There are a ton of individual variants of these carbines though, so let's try to figure out what mine is right quick. So the very first thing I notice here is that we have a side-mounted sling in both the front and rear, and those side-mounted sling swivels are pretty much a dead giveaway that this is a cavalry carbine model. The rifles for artillery troops will have a bottom-mounted sling. On the right side of the rifle, we can see our trigger/magazine assembly, but if we turn it over to the left side here, we can see a very interesting wood piece alongside the magazine. That's a really cool and unique feature of these Dutch M95s. I do believe this cavalry carbine would have originally been issued with a top handguard, but unfortunately that handguard does seem to be missing on my example here. These are equipped with a Mannlicher Schlegel milk type action with a split bridge receiver. The bolt action on this particular example is extremely smooth. Shockingly so, in fact. That was one of the main reasons I took this home when I checked it out. The rear end here and bolt removal closely resembles the Gewehr 88 of Germany, and although this bolt is looking pretty gunked up, it seems to be in fairly decent condition, with maybe just a little bit of rust. The model stamp is Hamburg 1921, so this would have been the World War II pattern of these Dutch M95 carbines. We don't have all that many markings on the receiver. We have a couple small stamps there. I'm guessing those are military acceptance stamps. And we have the serial number, which ends in 05C. At the gun show, the more I inspected this rifle, the more I liked it. I actually think it's close to all matching serial numbers. The front barrel band has an 05 there. The magazine and trigger assembly has an 05. The bolt release, the butt plate on the stock, and there are 05s all over this bolt. On the bolt handle, back here at the rear, on the safety selector, the cocking knob, and a couple on the bolt head there. I'm not quite sure if they serialized the stocks on these carbines, and if they did, I don't know where that serial number would be at. But we do have a crest or rondelle stamped in the stock here. Unfortunately, it's a little too faint to read exactly what that says, but I think it does say Hamburg. The wood on this rifle is really quite nice. Sure, there's a scratch or a ding or dent here or there, a couple pressure marks, but there are no signs of any cracking or major damage to it. It really does look good. We have this really interesting rear sight here. Right offhand, I'm not sure what the battle sight 0 for these were, but it looks like the sight is graduated in 100-meter increments, with the bottom marking there being 400 and the last marking being 12. If this does have a 400-meter battle sight, the Dutch really had some wishful thinking going into the Second World War, and I would expect this rifle to shoot pretty high at reasonable distances. That was a pretty sharp V-notch rear sight, by the way, and the front sight there is an inverted V, pretty adequate for the time period. The crown on our muzzle is very pretty, darn near perfect, I'd say. The stock does have a small arsenal repair in the wood, just below the barrel band and bayonet lug. I just wish I could have located some ammunition for it. After acquiring the rifle, I scoured the entire gun show for 6.5 Dutch, but alas, there was none to be found, and unfortunately, that's pretty common with these rifles. That 6.5 ammo is really hard to find. I did find some other pretty interesting ammo here. Firstly, I have some old school Norma. This was a 20 cartridge box of 7.7 Japanese. Unfortunately, the box is about half gone here, but check out that old school soft nose 7.7 Japanese. Head stamped by Norma. That was 9 rounds for 20 bucks, which of course isn't exactly cheap. But let's be honest, 7.7 Japanese ammo is never cheap, and this is a really cool old school vintage option for me here. Even cooler than the 7.7 Japanese though is this Norinco non-corrosive 7.62 by 25. You guys that have been around the hobby for a long time will instantly recognize these yellow Norinco boxes. They were pumping out ammo like crazy before the Chinese gun ban, in the good old days when you could get an SKS for 100 bucks. I have never seen 7.62 by 25 loaded by Norinco though, but it makes sense since there are Chinese Tokarevs. This is a full box of 60 cartridges, and they are a completely copper washed round. I believe that is a manufacturer's stamp of 1993. The price for Tokarev ammo is no joke, so I happily picked up this 60 round box for 25 bucks. When this rifle met my eye, I was instantly interested. I've been on the lookout for a Dutch carbine for the collection for a good long while, and this one does look really nice. Overall, externally, I would grade this carbine at about good to possibly very good. As I mentioned before, when I began my inspection, I was shocked at how smooth the action was for one thing, but when I got a glance at the bore of this thing, I was absolutely floored. It has a beautiful, shiny, mirror bright bore that looks like it's never been shot. And that's really surprising because in general, Dutch carbines can have pretty bad bore condition. And that's due to the fact that a lot of these rifles saw action in very humid jungle environments, which will eat up a bore very quickly with corrosive ammunition. A good looking rifle with matching serial numbers and a beautiful bore, needless to say, for 300 bucks, I had to take this one home. So what do you guys think? It is unfortunately missing that handguard, and that's a really hard part to replace. But given its overall condition here, and that absolutely beautiful bore, Do you guys think this rifle was worth 300 bucks, or did I get ripped off? I can say one thing for certain. I am not mad at finally adding a Dutch carbine to the collection. This is a really cool and pretty obscure little World War II rifle. I'm just hoping at some point I can find some ammo for it. GUNSHOW pricing can be extremely frustrating. It seems like every Milsurp platform these days is just ridiculously expensive most of the time. But I can't stop going to gun shows because every now and then you run across something really cool and prices are always negotiable, and it doesn't hurt to make an offer. The Milsurp market has certainly been tough, basically from the beginning of my channel, but if the Milsurp market can manage to follow the greater firearms market for just a little while, prices might come down maybe a little bit. I'm very curious to know what the firearms market is looking like where you're from. Of course, my point of view is always from here in Georgia, and it's different all over the country and even more so the world. If you follow your local Milsurp market and have maybe been to a gun show recently, let me know about your experiences down in the comments. And I suppose that about does it for today's video. I want to say a huge thank you to you guys for checking it out. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that thumbs up for the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of my future military surplus firearms content. Happy Milsurp hunting, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. See you then. Peace.